is Beck and welcome to kind of like a wrap up for 2021 or a reflecting on what I've read in contemporary for this year, because I'm not really sure what to call this video, but basically I'm looking back at all of the contemporary fiction titles that I've read this year and I'm trying to nail down the different things I particularly liked about them. So the first thing on this list is going to be Red, White and Royal Blue, and I gave this 5 stars. I read it at the start of this year. This is by Casey McQuiston and I adored it. It's about 2 boys and they fall in love, but they start out as enemies, so it's like an enemies to lovers story. The parts about this that I didn't like were the politics, because one of the characters, Henry, is directly linked to the royal family and then Alex is directly linked to a US presidency, so there was a lot of political jargon thrown around in here, but it really centered its focus on the characters, which I quite enjoyed, as well as the side characters too. They were built up very well and they felt fully fleshed out to me, not just like caricatures who would pop in and out of the narrative to make things feel more flush, but not actually to have any goals per se. So I like that the characters in here that we got introduced to actually had goals, motivations, personalities outside of our protagonist. And I also really like the romance in here, how it was kind of forbidden, how it was queer, and how side characters got to connect and support our main character as well. So there were lots of positives about this that I really enjoyed. And I read Casey McQuiston's book, One Last Stop, which I'll talk about later in the video, but I really liked that one too. I also read Wonderland by Juno Dawson, and in the past I've read Clean by her and I've read Meat Market by her, and I've loved both. Clean was a 5 stars, Meat Market was a 4 or 4.5. Clean was about addiction and then Meat Market was about the modelling industry and body image, and now Wonderland was about this girl who is a trans girl. She's attending school and she feels quite isolated and bullied, and it deals with a retelling of Alice in Wonderland with parties and drugs. And while all of the subject matter and the tone and voice of Juno Dawson's work was very true to form, I read her books because of her writing style and the tone she invokes. She really pulls you right into her stories. But personally, I don't like retellings, and I knew that going into this one, given the title is Wonderland, so I knew that I wouldn't love it, and I think I gave it a 3 stars or a 3.5 stars. The writing really saved it for me. It had a lot of personality, and while it was a retelling, generally I go into those obviously expecting what's going to happen because it is a retelling, so you already know the fairy tale, you know what has already happened. So I like the way that Wonderland remixed some of those things. It was quite intriguing and tantalizing to me, and it had interesting discussions about identity, sexuality, and also drugs, obviously. It was dark, it was interesting, but it's not a story that I particularly knew that I would have as a new favourite because obviously the retelling nature of it, but I'm glad I read it because I like Juno Dawson's writing, and I tend to stick to contemporary authors that I've read before. So that is my failing point in contemporary, because what happens when I've caught up on all of those authors? I don't really know where to go next, even though I know that I like contemporary as a genre. So far what I'm able to glean is I like it when there is a queer character and when there is a distinct personality and a voice, and I like it when there are distinct side characters as well that add such distinct flavour and detail to a story, and they're not caricatures, they're not cutouts, they really support the main character's growth. And again, I read Perfect on Paper, which is, like I said before, by an author I've already read from. So Only Mostly Devastated was this author's first book. I think it was their first book, or it's the first book that I know about. And it's a retelling of the musical Grease, and again, it has a queer protagonist, and I have a separate review for that. I adored it, gave it 5 stars. With Perfect on Paper, it has that kind of sex education formula. So in sex education, and also in this young adult book, there is a character who gives out sex advice and just relationship advice and advice in general. So in Perfect on Paper, our protagonist attends a school where her mum is one of the teachers, so she has after hours access, and there is a secret locker that everyone puts all of their advice into, or their letters and requests into, and that character collects them all, and then she replies anonymously via email to all of the things that she has received. Obviously she's got a separate email based on her identity, so it all remains anonymous. I like that there was a character in here that discovered her doing that, and there was like a blackmail situation, and it became like an enemies to lovers or rivals to lovers romance. I seem to like that tension and how it evolves and how it informs character. So that was something that I liked in Red, White and Royal Blue. Clearly it's something that I liked in this book as well. I like the banter it has. I like the growing respect that it can show you for the characters. And I gave Perfect on Paper, I think, a 4 stars, if not a 4.5. 3.5. Around the 4 mark anyway. It was a really enjoyable book. It was fast paced because it was YA. It had a few characters in it that you'd expect to be kind of surface level, but it delved a bit further into that as well, and it shone a light on them, which I really appreciated. So I did like Only Mostly Devastated more, but I did enjoy Perfect on Paper. And then after that I read volume 4 of Heartstopper. This is a contemporary young adult graphic novel series that I've fallen head over heels in love with. It follows Charlie. He is a gay kid at his school and he was outed and then bullied quite significantly, and we follow his journey as he starts to fall for his friend Nick, and in this case it's a friends to lovers scenario. I love the way we delve into discussions about friendship, identity and high school and studies and all of the different pressures on you. This one particularly delved into Charlie's mental health and how it got very dark very significantly very quickly, and I like the way that that conversation was handled and how the characters in here are teenagers. They're not supposed to solve the world's problems, they're not supposed to have all the answers, and I like again the support and the side characters. Something that I have been made aware of is the fact that I love side characters contributing to the actual narrative. I like how it makes the cast feel a lot bigger, I like how the scope of the story grows, and I like how it gives you opportunities to interact with them later. And I think some romances, or a general romance formula, is to follow a character and then have them fall in love with their significant other and introduce side characters around them that then gives standalone books later to those side characters we got introduced to. So I like that we got more detail around those characters, and I know that Solitaire I think follows Charlie's sister in this, and I haven't read that book. So when I was reading this, it skipped over a whole bunch of detail and kind of info dumped a little bit to catch you up, and that frustrated me. So I like being present in the moment. I don't like looking back, I don't like diary entries, I don't like reflecting, and a bunch of this story was told in diary entries and letters, and while it's an interesting formula in general, it didn't work for me in this book. So I gave this a 4. I still really loved it, but that was just a bit of a letdown for me. But I love graphic novels, and so naturally I'm going to love the rest of the installments in this series as well. And now we have circled back to One Last Stop, and this is another one by Casey McQuiston. This is a time travel romance set on a subway in New York City. It's about characters who are studying but also trying to find their right paths in life and cobbling together friendships and a life as they go. And I like the way that they were trying to come to grips with everything in their life, and it really formed a found family aspect to a story, and that is something I look for significantly in science fiction and fantasy books, as I mentioned in my sci-fi version of this video, but it's not something that I see often done outside of those genres. So it was nice to see it done in this one in particular. It's one of the strong points I had of this one. Again, all of the character voices and personalities felt very full to me, which is something I loved about this, and I liked the romance in here as well. I did have to suspend my disbelief a couple of times, and the plot could have been a little bit better to me because it felt very slow for the first like third or 2/3 and then amped up at the very end. So apart from those kind of like minor pacing plot things that I personally wish were done a little bit tighter, I adored this book. I loved the romance between our main character and Jane, and I like how it incorporated science fiction in a little bit of a way when it came to time travel and trying to break through that. It was quite enjoyable, quite funny, and I do quite like Casey McQuiston's voice. They've proven to me that they are going to write characters that I just really love and respect, and they address issues in there like identity, mental health, queerness, and they are all handled in a very mature way, very true to character as well. So definitely going to pick up more stuff that Casey McQuiston writes in the future. And then this video is almost over because I don't read a ton of contemporary, although I do really want to read more. So if you've got any other recommendations, please let me know, because I really want to dive further into the genre, but I'm kind of teetering around the edge just based on authors I already know and have read from before. So it would be nice to actually jump fully headfirst into other things that I haven't experienced before. However, the last book on this kind of wrap-up reflection video is The Surprising Power of a Good Dumpling, and this is one that I read recently in September and I gave it a 5 stars. This follows Anna, and it's a young adult book, but all of the things that it balances, it gave airtime to everything, and it felt very cleverly balanced, and that's why I loved it. So Anna is in high school, her mum has deep depression, so it falls on Anna to look after her younger siblings. So she's got a sister that's just a bit younger than her, and then she's got a very younger brother who's like 5 or 6 years old, and in addition to that, her dad is while not completely absent, not entirely present, because he often sleeps at the restaurant that they own, which is more than an hour's drive away, and he's trying to manage that business for them. And he has a standoffish approach when it comes to mental health, which links deeply into Chinese culture. So they're Chinese Australian, and you get a lot of that culture in here, a lot of the expectations of that culture, how it marries up with different things and causes tension between the expectations of Australian study and what Anna wants from her own identity and relationships and friendships. So I really like the way that mental health in here particularly was balanced alongside responsibilities and pressures that you would experience normally as a teenager at the end of your schooling and having to think about the rest of your life and what that means. So I loved the way that this handled all of those themes, and even in the darker themes and the way that there was a romance in here as well. It didn't go down that road of romance fixes everything. It was very maturely handled, and I quite enjoyed everything about this, hence the 5 stars. So based on this, and then based on the other things that I've read that are contemporary, I like it when there is queer positive characters or queer characters. I like it when there's found family. I like it when there is mental health that is treated very maturely, and also when there are characters that are side characters that have a lot of depth to them as well. And I also like enemies to lovers, but who doesn't? So I guess that is what my thoughts are for contemporary overall. If you have any recommendations, I'm all ears. Please recommend them to me down below. But again, thank you so much for watching this video. I'll come chat to you down in the comments, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.